Hey guys, just wanted to jump on here really quick. I've had a lot of people reach out to me in terms of how they can support what I'm doing. I am doing this full time now, and if you'd like to contribute, if you like and value the work that I'm doing and like to contribute, on every single episode, I have a title "Support My Work." Underneath it, there's a Venmo, Locals, Cash App, or if you prefer not to use one of those methods, you can mail a check or money order to PO Box 25383, Scottsdale, Arizona 85255 9998. So, again, thank you for all the support. Appreciate it and look forward to more conversations ahead. Jayant, Happy New Year. Thank you for doing this. I must say, listening to you over the last couple of days, it's good to meet you well, not in person, meet you via Zoom and be able to talk to you because the conversation, let me start off by saying the conversation that you had with Matt Smith and Doug Casey, completely eye-opening for me. I mean, you guys talked about things that it's amazing when you hear something and you're just like, wow, I never looked at it that way. And I mean, I didn't even share this with you offline. I'm a big yoga person. And what you guys talked about in yoga, about the yoga subject, I was like, wow, never thought of it that way. I mean, so if you could please talk about the yoga aspect really quick, and because that was go ahead. What
Okay.
people in the Western world, yoga based in India, it was originated in India. I used to practice a lot of Mysore, which is a form of Ashtanga, which is a place in India. And so again, you and Matt and Doug, I'll turn it over to you now.
So Matt, thanks for having me on, and Happy New Year to you too. So I have nothing against yoga as a stretching exercise. I just did mine before I came on this call. I actually go for some of the yoga classes once in a while. I do Vipassana meditation. I've been doing it for the last 30 years. So I have nothing against yoga and Vipassana as meditation as such. But there's a problem with how yoga is promoted in the Western society. Yoga, if you look at the West Coast, if you look at the whole of the coastal area of California or the western part of Canada, there are five-star retreats. The whole coast is lined up with five-star retreats to do with yoga, where they not only suck away your money, but might even sexually exploit you. There was one guy who is running away from the U.S. I can't remember his name. The guy who used to do hot yoga. He is charged for sexual assaults on a series of women. A
Bikram,
person who became
Bikram Giant.
Vikram, yeah, Vikram. And he made a humongous amount of money. But the only problem I have with yoga is the association of yoga with so-called spirituality. And what it does is when you start thinking of yoga as a spiritual technique, you actually enter the dark area of paganism and polytheism. Now, Matt, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in the concept of religion. I still think that if you must believe in the concept of religion, monotheism actually gives you the most objective way of thinking. The moment you are polytheistic, the problem is you can pick and choose God, and you become morally relativistic because you have no real anchors, even as a religious person. So yoga has resulted into a massive increase in leftism and progressiveness and wokeism in the Western society. The problem with the way yoga is promoted in the West is that it is promoted as a spiritual exercise in which a lot of rich women join, a lot of uh, LGBTQ people join, and they want to directly or indirectly promote a strange kind of wokeism and leftism. And this had to happen because when your morality is relativistic, you are a floating abstraction. Your mind is a floating abstraction, and you have no anchors in life, and you only believe in this superstitious optimism. So these people are very happy, but then when they are facing the society, but when they go back home, they face an existential crisis. So that's my problem with yoga as far as it is associated with spirituality. The second thing is that there's something very special about Americans and the larger Western society. They are very self-deprecating people. So I could be sitting on a plane in America, and the person next to me might be a leftist, might be a nationalist, might be anti-American. He could belong to a whole spectrum of ideas and beliefs in the U.S. And if I tell him that, hey, America is screwed up in Afghanistan, or it is screwed up in Libya, more likely than not, his response will be, yes, I agree with you. We screwed up. Americans want to see very readily accept the negative sides of their own society and of themselves. And the reason is that as a nation, America continues to be a very confident nation. So they have no problems accepting their mistakes, even if those mistakes are exaggerated mistakes. Now, what happens with the third world people is that these are people living in hellholes or shitholes. They are wallowing in a cesspool. Their lives are wretched and full of tyranny, but they don't want to accept any problem within their societies. And the reason is that they are brimming with inferiority complex. So, so that is where what I say sounds strange to you, because third world people don't talk about bad things to do with their own community. But if they had the mindset of an American, they would be talking 5 times more than what I do, because at the end of the day, my experience of third world is still based on figuratively or literally chauffeur-driven air-conditioned car. So I get driven around and I just say what I see with my eyes. The reality is much worse in the third world shitholes.
What you know, the other thing with that is what I found interesting, and I encourage people that are going to listen to this to listen to Jayant's conversation with Matt and Doug. But you brought something up about immigration versus illegal immigration, legal immigration versus illegal immigration, because the people illegally coming through, they are motivated to get here, versus the legal immigration, they're just figuring out ways to get the paperwork, dot the I's and cross the T's to get in. And I'm not advocating for either one of these things, but I just thought it was an interesting perspective that you brought out of what these people on the illegal side are willing to do to get here.
So Americans have one obsession. They don't want to look racist. And it leads to many psychopathies in Americans. So when you talk about immigration, hey, the world over, people just don't want immigration, period. Why do Western people don't want to admit that they don't want immigration? Because the fear that pervades the mind of an American is that he does not want to look racist. So when you talk to him about immigration, his usual response will be, I'm okay with legal immigration, but I am not fine with illegal immigration. The problem is that there are thousands of towns and cities in India, and in every single of these towns and cities, there is at least one high-rise building devoted to nothing else but cooking up fake documents for you to immigrate to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or the United States. They will create any kind of resume you want to do. Also, they will even do interviews for you. So, Matt, I have spent the last 15 years living between Philadelphia and San Francisco, and I know the people. When these companies interview people in India, sitting in India, they would be facing the real candidate, but he would be lip syncing what the other person would be responding. This is extraordinarily common. There is no way American authorities don't know about what's happening. H-1B is ridden with frauds. So when you complain about Infosys or Tata Consulting, some of the big companies that supply copy and paste labor to American IT companies, the reality is that there are a lot of smaller companies that do exactly the same thing and with even less moral hesitation. Legal immigration, for all intents and purposes, is no less uh, no no less legal than illegal immigration is. I actually, in a way, admire those people who put in an effort to fly into El Salvador and start walking up from El Salvador to the US. Maybe they will become more self-aware while they go through the process of punishing themselves. So in many ways, illegal ones might be better than the legal ones.
Yeah, that's. I'm thinking so differently about that after you said those words because, first of all, in regards to H-1B, this has been going on for a very long time. I mean, I've worked for companies. I mean, I don't know exactly what the visa was, but it was employees were from India, and look, it's indentured servitude as far as I'm concerned, right? I mean, because they get them over here, they pay them whatever they're going to pay them, and the employees, the people from India, know they just can't quit because they have to find another company that's willing to take on the visa, right? So they're stuck.
And they should be matched because the only reason they are in the US is to work for that specific company. The declared intention is not to immigrate to the US. The declared intention is to work for that company and return back home. So I think that is the policy by itself is I have nothing against, but Western countries should stop giving out citizenship so easily. And that is the problem because people find a way to immigrate and then find something else and find something else and eventually become citizens. And that is where dilution of the local culture happens. Look at what China, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, all these countries do. They will very happily let you in to work. You can work there without any problem. They treat you very nicely. They make sure you get paid well. Your rights are fully covered. They give as much respect to you as they do to a citizen. But even in Dubai, Oman, Bahrain, what happens is that you could have lived there for 100 years, over 3 generations or something, and they will still not give you their passports because they do not want to dilute the local populations. And I think the problem with the Western society, I come back to earlier, what I said earlier was that Western people are obsessed with not looking racist. And that leads to a lot of psychopathies.
And also the fascist country that we're in now, where you've got corporate, private public partnerships, and it benefits these private corporations to have, people from India and other countries to be employed.
Yes, and these companies indeed lose out in the long term, but they do profit in the short term. And this is, of course, a very strange thing. But what happens is that I work in the capital markets, uh, Mike, sorry. What happens with corporations is that managers are more interested in delivering the next quarterly results. They are not interested in what happens 2 years or 5 years down the line. And they don't really care about the social costs of what they are doing because their interest is in their own financials. As a result, companies are more than happy to bring in cheap labor. The issue is that the government should not be run on the basis of the interests of corporations. Government should be run on the basis of the interests of the society. And that is where lobbying by these companies have a very negative effect on the society of the Western countries.
Well, and also too, the fabric of the United States has forever changed. And this was, yes, in the last 4 years, but this has been going on for how many years prior to this, where, I mean, it accelerated with the illegal immigration, but the amount of legal immigration, the amount of families that are brought in, because the United States, it's night and day from 20 years ago.
Well, and also, Mike, the one big problem with legal immigrants is that, particularly the ones who get well paid, they become extremely arrogant. And these are the people who then talk about how the CEOs from third world, people from the third world countries now are CEOs of the top American companies, and how well they live and what kind of $1 million mansions these people have. So now the problem is that because they came in from the third world and went straight into higher positions, well-paid positions, these people really don't get an occasion to do a self-reflection, going through the thought about becoming morally anchored or rationally anchored, because they're using their one expertise to make money, which is perfectly fine. I have nothing against it. But it is extremely important that you fit into the social fabric of America. And a lot of these people don't do. Now, I just read before I came online that the whole of the Indian caucus in the US Congress voted against deporting sex offenders back to the third world. Now, that's absolutely crazy. These people are not working in the interests of America, America as an American society. They're working in the interests of their own tribal communities. And these are the people who actually did not have to struggle to come to the US. The way to the US was easily paved for them, and it was easy for them to come over.
And them growing up in India, there is no morality, right? I mean, it's all based upon sex and money. Did I understand that correctly?
Absolutely, Mike. You struggle if you talk about moral values and being nice to people or being virtuous. People laugh at you. It does not matter who they are. They will simply laugh at you. They will give you comments like, "Are you trying to become a saint, or are you trying to become a philosopher?" So the conversation that we are having right now is impossible in that country. In that country, you never discuss ideas. What you discuss with your people around you in your cities is celebrities, politicians, women, sex, and I have nothing against all any of these things. I'm not, I have nothing against talking about these things. Um, but these are the only interests that dominate their minds from adolescence all the way to their death. They just don't care about anything else. They have no interest in other people. They have no social consciousness. They have no moral consciousness. And they are irrational people. So, yes, this is the way the society works, which means that the society is a very atomized society. Everyone is thinking about himself. He has no interest in the costs that he imposes on other people.
So I have to ask you, like in your own upbringing then, or a child's upbringing in India, because I look at like my own self. I mean, I'm 46, I'll be 47 in May. And when I was a little kid, from what I can remember, going through elementary school, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, I don't know if it was the school or my parents or both. Like, we showed respect. We were disciplined. We were taught morality. So how is it being a young child in India when you're in elementary school playing with other kids? Is there not any type of, hey, what you did was wrong, discipline, there's just no morality there?
Yeah, there's a lot of discipline in that country, but that's all arbitrary discipline. For the same reason that you could get beaten up today would be a reason why you would get praised tomorrow. For example, let's go to a bureaucrat I used to know in New Delhi, an extremely corrupt person, but which bureaucrat in India is not corrupt? Uh, but this guy who used to make a lot of money from bribes in because of the very good position he held. One day I was having dinner with him, and he, during the conversation, after having a few drinks, he started crying. And he told me, Jayant, my son expects only one thing from me, which is money. He doesn't care about me. He has no interest in me. And the only thing is money of mine that he's interested in. Uh, I didn't want to say anything to him, but hey, your son is doing what he sees rather than what you tell him. So you might be telling your son not to cheat you, but the fact is that the son knows that you're cheating the world, everyone in the world, and he learns to cheat other people. And why would he make an exception for you? So his son, of course, is going to become corrupt, and in his corruption will be his dad as well. So telling people to be honest with me but not with the other people doesn't work, because that's not moral education. That's just an instruction of do's and don'ts. So there's nothing moral that sticks in the minds of people which is universal. So there is a lot of discipline. Your teachers and people in authority will dominate you and tyrannize you nonstop. And people do respect those tyrants. If you go to a government office, you would everywhere, irrespective of where you are in India, you would see people begging to get things done. They would call these bureaucrats, these petty, corrupt, brain-dead bureaucrats, sir. They will address these bureaucrats as sir 3 times in a sentence. And Indians carry on this habit of calling other people sir the moment they think someone might be more powerful than them. So again, there is respect, but this respect is not based on real respect. It's based on fear. The moment they become more powerful, they will expect the same groveling behavior from you. So again, what might come across as respect for you from them is not respect. It's the fear of authority that they exhibit.
Well, and also too, though, because I was always under the impression, the people that I've encountered that are here, like we have a big Discover credit card center not far from where I live in Phoenix. So I've had people in the past that I've come in past talks spoken with that are here from India working. But they're all they're trying to find the parents are trying to find them an Indian woman in the United States in an arranged marriage. So I always just thought they were morally sound people that looking to get married, had started a family right away, and divorce was low, and I mean, so I'm blown away by what you're saying here, because on the surface as an American, I did not expect that.
So, Mike, again, come back to what we were just talking about. We were talking about discipline and respect, and I explained to you that it might look like discipline and respect, but those things are not discipline and respect. The respect that they exhibit towards you, which a lot of Western people are very happy with, because if someone calls you sir twice in a sentence, is almost pleading towards you and groveling in front of you. If you are using that person as a worker, you might actually be very happy that this person is going to stay loyal and faithful to me, and he's going to do his job. The problem is that he will backstab you when the time comes. Again, what you just told me are the superficial aspects of people. That does not necessarily mean that they are moral people. Now, people, looking for an Indian woman for an Indian male is perfectly fine. I think races and cultures don't necessarily mix. Most people, particularly people of the third world, are tribal people, and they are better off with people of their own kind, because otherwise the value system, the belief system, because those are based on tribal basis, do not mix. So unlike what is advertised in the movies, Hollywood movies or the television, I think usually it's much better to marry someone from your own race, your own religion, your own caste. However, I might add, Mike, that there are only one kind of people in the world who have risen above their tribal identities. And they are the Western people and people of East Asia, which is Japan, Korea, and China. Although the East Asians are still a lot more attached to their tribal identity. But apart from these people, these two groups of people, other people are very concretely attached to their tribal identity. So if you think they will ever assimilate in the cultural sense that they would rise above their tribal identity, is never going to happen. They will always stay a Hindu, they will always stay Muslim, and their only interest and anchoring is to their own nation and religion, despite the fact that those are exactly the things that they actually ran away from by immigrating to the US. But the problem is that they are only also amoral and irrational people, so they don't really see the causality. They never introspect. And introspection is a very Western idea. Introspection does not exist among people of the third world. They are never at anything wrong. They never make a mistake. They will never admit to their mistakes. So that's how their mind works. So I have nothing against Indian parents looking for an arranged marriage for their son. The only problem I have is with people in America who thought that these people would come over to America and eventually get diffused in the American society as normal American. They will not. They will actually become worse with time. They will become more tribal with time, with every passing generation. So unlike conventional wisdom, they are not going to assimilate in that second or third generation. They will become worse as each generation passes.
Well, what are your thoughts on J.D. Vance and he married a woman who's a Hindu, who's Indian, who practices Hindu. What were your thoughts when you first saw that and he was announced as the vice president?
Well, the moment Trump announced that, I realized that Trump was pandering to the swing votes of Indians in the US. Now, there are, if I'm not wrong, 5 million Indians in the United States. Most of these people have come to the US over the last 3 decades. And Indians vote on tribal basis, Muslims vote on tribal basis, Sikhs vote on tribal basis, Africans vote on tribal basis. So people of the third world vote on tribal basis. And Indians, what Trump wanted was that, I thought that he wanted those Indians voting for him, particularly because Kamala Harris is seen as half Indian. I mean, there are temples of Kamala Harris now in the village that her parents were grown in. And that is what polytheistic people have a problem with. Anything can become God for them. There are Trump temples as well in India, with idols of Trump, the real life-size idols of Trumps in India. So anyone can become a god in that country. And this is the problem with paganism and polytheism. And that's what explains to me why the religions of the desert dislike paganism. But anyway, when Vance became a vice presidential candidate, I did not know anything about him. But my first impression was that this was to get Indian votes. But I feel very uncomfortable when I see first or second or even third or fourth generation Indians or third world people rising into positions of power. Now, of course, that does not mean I have any favorable view for Biden. If the occasion was between Vance and Biden, I would actually choose Vance or Vivek. But the fact remains that I know that in general, these people of the third world, do not have moral consciousness. And then I, of course, think that Vance's marriage to an Indian, what kind of moral implications that marriage has on his mind. And the big risk being that Vance is not unlikely to become pro-India as a result, pro-Hindu fanatic organizations as a result, which Tulsi very likely is. And unfortunately, this is something which shocks me when I tell people that Islamic fanaticism is bad enough. It has created a disaster in Europe. Islamic fanaticism. They will never assimilate. They are violent. They are ghettoized, and they will always have a separate identity. So Islamic immigration to Europe is bad enough. The problem with you is that you haven't really so far experienced an average Indian. Once an average Indian starts becoming more visible in Europe and in the Western society, you will start feeling nostalgic for Islamic fanaticism. Because an average Indian is even more chaotic and I would say savage and barbaric. So you really have no experience when you over focus on Islamic fanaticism. When you should focus on Islamic fanaticism, it is a problem. But you still haven't met the average sub-Saharan African, and I have traveled a lot in sub-Saharan Africa, or an average Indian.
Yeah, and Tulsi, I did not know she was a practicing Hindu.
Yeah, she's a practicing Hindu, but also a cult movement. I don't really differentiate between cult movements and religions, but she's a participant in what is considered a cult movement, which is Hare Krishna. And the problem is, Mike, that you might be very rational, you might be a very nice person, but if you are a part of a certain community, you are unlikely to see the fanaticism of that community with the same strength that it actually exists for a dispassionate observer. So if you are a Muslim and you could be perfectly fine, I have Muslim friends who are wonderful people, but if you are within that community, you will not see Islamic fanaticism the way it is. And similarly, my fear is that Tulsi, Vivek, and Vance might be more India focused than they should be. And they would be focused on India at likely at the cost of America, but also likely at the cost of building a relationship with China. Now, I'm a big fan of China. I spent some time in China. Now, China is a second world country. There are a lot of, China is not perfect. But if you want to have a relationship in Asia, you want to have that relationship with China because China is anchored to something objective. India will backstab you when the time comes. Every relationship in India is a transaction. So they will be your best friends, but only because there's a material objective behind it. But when the time comes, they will change themselves overnight. Again, I would, and India has nothing good to offer to the US. Americans are very confused about it, but India has nothing good to offer to the US. Whereas just about everything you have in your room or half of the stuff you have in your house likely comes from China. You likely have nothing made in India in your house.
Well, and getting back to Vance and Vivek, and even Elon for a second, not so much Tulsi because I don't know that she has any venture capital, big tech in her her experience, but those guys. I mean, look where they came from, Peter Thiel. So it's in their benefit to have this H-1B continue and if not increase.
Yeah, I have nothing against Elon Musk or Vivek as individuals. I actually like Vivek quite a bit. I like Elon Musk quite a bit. I think as individuals, they are perfectly fine people. But the problem, Mike, is that these days, and this has been happening for at least half a century or a century, you can become extraordinarily rich without really understanding how the world works. You can become rich because you are an expert in an isolated part of the economy. Now, that does not mean I want to demean the achievements of Elon Musk. He has achieved a lot in life. Maybe Vivek did the same thing, although there are a lot of accusations against him about having scammed investors to become rich. The fact remains that they are both very intelligent people, and they are a good by themselves. In isolation, they would be good contributors to the American society. But I don't think they have an understanding of the world which makes them capable to to be influential in public policy, and that will be disastrous, because if they don't understand that there is a difference between people from the third world, if they haven't thought about philosophical aspects, if they haven't really lived among the third world people, and very likely they haven't, because it seems that both of them have been reasonably well off when they came to America. So if they haven't lived among the third world people, they don't really understand the third world people, and I think they should abstain from getting involved in public policy.
Well, and this brings me up to the whole DOGE, right? The Department of Government Efficiency that Vivek and Elon are supposed to be heading up. And somebody posed this to me, and I thought it was like, wow, another one of those things where, the idea sounds one way, and then you start to try to implement it, and something else pops up, because you start looking at these government jobs that you're going to, and obviously there's thousands of them that could be eliminated, but who are the types of people ethnically that, have these positions? If there is a large portion that are black, and I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say they are, what is that going to do from the standpoint, the media is going to jump on that and saying, oh, black people are being laid off. You don't care about the black people. And it's going to turn into this whole storm.
Mike, I have been to city offices in San Francisco, San Mateo in California, and in Vancouver. And unfortunately, they are predominantly people of a non-European ethnicity, and predominantly women. These offices are packed with women and people of color. Yes, you are 100% right. It will be extremely hard, virtually impossible to implement what Elon Musk and Vivek are claiming. I wish them all the success. I hope they achieve their objective, but this isn't going to happen, because this isn't going to be easy, because how do you get rid of literally tens of millions of people who are not worth a penny?
And once that word is, it's kind of like the mass deportation. Jayant, I'm not very optimistic about things here in this country. I mean, I had somebody call me out on Twitter earlier today saying, you got to have faith. You can't be despair. I'm not, I'm going to say this on here. I don't have despair. I get out of bed. I'm talking to you. I don't believe in the whole cross my fingers, close my eyes, and hope and hope and hope and hope. I'm just not on that wagon. I didn't think Trump would win. I thought they would install Kamala. He won. I was wrong. I've admitted it. But as we, especially over the last couple of weeks, you see big tech did everything they could to get rid of him in 2020. This whole thing, everything's been just paved for him. It has. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy, but you have to question this and wonder, what is going on here?
So Mike, I completely agree with you. I think this deportation that they are talking about, again, is not easy. There are so many right-wing people. If you read what they write on Twitter, they talk about not only deporting illegal immigrants, they're talking about canceling visas of people who are working in the US. And then they are going further and saying that even American citizens will be deported back to the homelands that their parents or they came from. Now, these people are using pseudonyms. They are not even out with their real names. So where is their... So I have nothing against the spirit behind it. I think America needs to clean itself up. But where is the spirit? So I'm okay with the spirit, but where is the organization? These people are using pseudonyms. They are isolated people, somewhere, completely unknown people. There's no organization. How are they going to ever achieve deportation of even illegal immigrants when they are not together? They don't really have a voice except on Twitter. So I completely agree with you. I do want to see deportation happening in the US, but I doubt if they will even be able to achieve deportation of illegal immigrants the way Trump has claimed he will do.
No, and this country, do you feel like the United States doesn't have morality anymore? Do you think it's on the level of India, and if not, how close do you think it is?
Well, in my 30 years of having visited America, America has degraded quite a bit. So Vivek is right in saying that America has degraded quite a bit in the last 30 years, and I'm reasonably sure it has degraded a lot in the last 100 years. However, what Vivek did in his tweet was juxtapose in India with America, and then he wanted to imply that somehow India was better than the US. Now, even today, I would say America is a million times better than India. So, Americans are still extremely moral people, extremely rational people, which also means, Mike, that you haven't seen how worse things will become with time if you continue on the path that you are on. And I see no evidence that you will change that path. So, yes, America will continue to worsen over the next few decades, and it will start becoming more and more third world like. But I cannot see America ever becoming anything like India in my lifetime because India is just a complete shithole. Every step you take in India is a shithole.
What happens in the future of India? I mean, you were talking about. I mean, do you see a war with Pakistan? Do you see how? What's the future of India?
Well, everything is dysfunctional in that country, and everything is dysfunctional in Pakistan as well. Um, any organization of two people in those countries, I would like to say, has one person too many. They are atomized people, they can't organize. So, how are they going to fight a war with each other? All the talk about war is for internal consumption, that is for demagoguery. India talks everything about China for internal consumption to increase nationalism and show to Indians how strong the prime minister is. And the same is the case in Pakistan. The military wants more and more budget for itself. So they want to create this war hysteria to get more and more budget for themselves. Now, Pakistan's military is very corrupt as well. Here is the issue. India cannot afford to fight a war with Pakistan because if there's ever a war with Pakistan, it will actually convert into a war with China. Pakistan and China are very close to each other, and China will provide Pakistan all possible support that Pakistan wants. In fact, if I'm not wrong in understanding, when India had did an adventure inside Pakistan a few years back, when they sent a plane or two, a fighter plane or two inside Pakistani territory, they not only completely failed in their mission, they also lost their plane and the pilot got arrested in Pakistan. But what I hear is that Pakistan was able to disconnect communication between the Indian fighter plane and the Indian operators, which means that they have the technology, the communication technology from China, which enables Pakistan to just break up communication of Indian fighter planes and army brigades from the headquarters. Now, if that actually is true and if that happens, how is India ever going to fight a war? I mean, they can only fight battles of independent people who go in isolation. So my view is that India could not win a war with China in 1962 when Chinese economy on per capita basis was worse than that of India. Now Chinese economy is 5 or 6 times bigger than that of India. China has the world's biggest naval fleet. I think it will be even easier for China to win over India in no time.
So, if you're India, then what do you do? Do you cozy up to both China and Russia in hopes that one, if not both, um, will welcome them in, or
Well, no one trusts India really. I think India, despite being the most populous country on the planet, has no respect anywhere in the world. For example, now this has been quoted by very influential people, but a week or so back, Indian foreign minister was sitting outside the office of Trump, trying to beg for an invitation from Trump for Modi to come to the inaugural ceremony. Now, Trump hasn't invited Modi, India's prime minister, the prime minister of the most populated country on the planet, to his inauguration. And Modi is feeling humiliated. Trump invited Xi Jinping of China, and China declined that invitation. So really, no one likes no one respects India, and no one thinks that India will be a friend. Now, China, I don't think China wants to destabilize India. When in 1962 there was a war between India and China, China walked all over. They entered into India to the extent they wanted to, and a lot more, without much restriction. And then they went back again. They did not want to keep too much of areas of India. I don't think China wants any areas of India. China only wants to humiliate Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, because for internal consumption, Modi makes very bold statements within the country. So China wants to, I think, humiliate Modi, but at the same time, I don't think China wants to destabilize India, because if India falls apart, and it will eventually, imagine what the consequences will be on China. I mean, it's a neighboring country. Imagine millions of Indians trying to get into China at that point of time. There are millions of refugees. So I don't think China wants to destabilize India more than it already is.
India is it imminent them collapsing in your view, or is it one of those things where it's years off?
Well, it's like a structure that has been completely eaten away by termite. The structure, I don't know if you have seen those termite-eaten structures. You could have really nice-looking structures that look perfectly solid, but might have, except for the veneer, if you scratch the veneer, all you see inside is colonies of termite. That is pretty much is the situation with India. India is a very brittle structure. There's nothing keeping it together, except that these days, unlike what used to happen 100 or 200 years back, when enemies would try to take over your area or your women, because those things no longer happen, there's no real threat. And also, America is a big participant in it, because if China wants to attack India, or if Pakistan wants to attack India, or Sri Lanka wants to attack India, America will jump right in to stop that war. So India stays a country because of American pressure, and because of the fact that there are really no one trying to break it up. But for all intents and purposes, it is really a country that doesn't work. It has fallen apart. People are, as I said, people are very atomized people. Any organization of two people has one person too many in that country. So it is not really a country for all intents and purposes, and it will physically fall apart at some point of time. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I don't know, but it will fall into separate jurisdictions at one point of time, and the situation will get worse when that happens. And the reason the situation will get worse is because all those countries that will emerge from what is India today will fight for the border. They will fight for water. They will fight for all kinds of things with each other. The problem is Indians cannot sit across the table and come to a rational negotiation. So unlike what French and Germans eventually did after the Second World War, or European countries could manage after the Second World War. That is not what Indians are capable of. Because firstly, they don't really respect any contract. Every contract is ignored if it goes against you. So, and they don't have the concept of reason as a disinterested mechanism to solve problems. So Indians can't sit across the table and come to a win-win solution. So once India has fallen apart, all these different broken up parts will get into forever tribal fights. To imagine what the outcome will be, think about all these tribes in sub-Saharan Africa fighting with each other. That's what India will end up in. These people will revert to what they were like 1,000 years back. They will fight with each other. All capital will get destroyed, and they will revert back to uh, the lives that they have 1,000 years back. But having said that, 80 to 90% of Indians still live the lives they used to live 1,000 years back. I mean, it's a country with GDP per capita of $2,500, a big chunk of which accrues to the rich 5% of the population. So 80 to 90% of people live really wretched life in that country.
And that's what they're trying to do here, right? That's what the United States is in the process of. They're heading down that same path.
Well, the more and more third world influence you have in the US, the more third world like America will become. And I was talking with someone yesterday, and he was saying that, in the conversation with Matt and Doug, I said that Doug asked me what I see as the most hopeful future of the US. And I said the most hopeful future for the US would be a civil war, a civil war in which actually a cleaning up takes place very quickly. But more likely than not, America will degrade into something like Colombia or Brazil. And this is the conversation I was having with someone yesterday. And I'm reasonably confident that America will be more and more like Colombia and Brazil over the next 20 and 30 years.
I feel like we're in a political civil war and a I don't know how I would word this, a society civil war, but nothing's kinetic yet. It's not hot.
And that's the problem. You better have a hot war so that a quick cleaning happens, because then you have clarity of thought. You know exactly what you want, which is mass scale deportation of people who do not fit in, or even on racial lines. But that is not going to happen. You can't change the thinking of a society overnight. And this is where I think, despite that, I like the spirit of the ultra right in the US, they will fail because they are isolated people. There's no social thinking emerging within the American society which wants to clean the society up. Here is another problem, Mike. Close to 50% of Americans are now people from the third world. So how are you going to clean up a society, half of which is made up of the people who would be deported according to the right-wing people? And I'm in a spirit, I'm with them. But how are you ever going to achieve that? That is an impossible job in a democracy. But even in a civil war situation, how are you going to get rid of half of your population?
It's never going to happen.
Never going to happen.
So who's in worse shape right now in your view, the United States or Canada?
Ah, God, I think.
And before you answer that, Jayant, let me just bring up the fact that we're recording this today, which I'm going to put this out as soon as we're done. But Justin Trudeau has resigned as leader of his political party. So your thoughts on that, and then back to which country do you think is in a worse state?
I think Canada is very likely in a worse state, but it doesn't really matter, Mike, because both America and Canada the whole of the Western society is in a horrible shape right now. And without the US, nothing works. Without the US is the spine of the Western world. If the US goes, everything in the Western world will fall apart very quickly. They don't have their own defense systems. Uh, they don't have a moral spine by themselves without America. So I think America will, after Trump, will become a permanent Democratic Party country. It will become increasingly woke and leftist. And there's, of course, not going to be, Trump is going to maybe slow down degradation of the US, but I don't see any hope for stopping that degradation. I think both of them are in very bad shape. Canada, there's a spirit in America. There's a spirit of liberty in America. There's a spirit in America to fight for certain values. Canada has increasingly become a lifestyle country. Great place. I love being in Canada. It's a great country, but it has increasingly become a lifestyle country. The economy has got screwed in the meantime, and Trudeau was a big participant in destroying the economy of Canada, and also by bringing in millions and millions of people from the third world who don't fit in. So Canada is in a truly bad shape, but so is America. And I really don't think these countries have any hope for the future, because all America is going to be a third world people majority country within the next 2 decades. And Canada is only a step or two behind. So I don't have any hope from the Western world, despite that America continues to be the best country on the planet. But the future is really grim.
Oh, and even in the next 4 years. So you touched on that. Do you think Trump can slow this down? Because I mean, we just spent almost an hour talking about immigration versus illegal versus legal, and legal, based on what we talked about, it sounds worse, and they're going to increase that.
Yes, and you get more legitimate news on this subject from the media in India. Apparently, H-1B will be even more eased up over the next, at the moment. That's what is being discussed within the US government. So, yeah, I completely agree. It will be very difficult for Trump to achieve much. He did not achieve all that much in his last uh, 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 time as president. So, what makes me think that he will achieve much today? But still, he is a lot better than Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party. So, I would have voted for him if I had the right to vote in the US. I would have even voted for Vivek over Kamala Harris. But I think the destruction of the US is baked in the cake. It does not really matter what he can achieve or whether he can slow things down or even improve over the next 4 years. But what happens after 4 years is baked in the cake. So the next 4 years is just a blip in the scheme of things.
Would you have voted, Jayant, if you were able to? Would you have participated in the system? Do you have faith in the voting systems in America?
Absolutely. I hardly ever vote. I have almost never voted in my life, but when the difference between two people is so huge, the way it is between Kamala Harris and Trump, I would have clearly gone for Trump, despite the fact that Trump has, Trump is no saint. Trump has done a lot of bad things in life, but the difference between Trump and Harris is so much that I would go for Trump without blinking an eyelid.
So, in your view, then, in the next 4 years, Trump won't get a lot done, and so do you think because of all the promises that he's made, and you correct me here, I don't want to speak for you, all the promises that he's made, he won't be able to deliver, so then the country will shift back to the other side and move in that direction?
Well, the key is that demographics is the key. That's the higher order factor working against America. And demographics is that more than 50% of Americans under the age of 25 are ethnically non-European. And Mike, there is no country on the planet which has a non-European or non-East Asian majority and is still a civilization. Every single country which does not have a European or East Asian majority is a shithole. And that tells you that the higher order factor working against America. You could get Ron Paul or the most ideal person as the president of America. How are you going to turn things around? This is not a Titanic. This is a million times bigger Titanic. How are you going to change the direction of this Titanic when virtually every bureaucrat is against you? So Trump can do something, maybe he can slow things down, but how is he going to deal with the demographic collapse, the demographic problem that is coming, which is that the third world people are increasingly asserting themselves in politics. And after 20th of January, Republican Party will have to start thinking about how to win the election 2 years from now and 4 years from now. And every single urban center in North America is dominated by people from the third world. Anything like 60 to 80% of the population of every single urban area in North America has third world people in majority in to up to 60 to 80% majority. So how are you really going to turn this Titanic around? There's no way out of this.
Well, and then we didn't even touch on the financial portion as well, because first of all, the system is so, our society is so fragile to begin with. And to what you said earlier, to your point, people aren't willing to do what's really necessary. And I'm with you on the whole. I'm not calling for civil war, and God, I never would want that to happen. But it's at a point now where, you can't, you're not voting your way out of this.
Yes, and Mike, I agree with that. There is a problem with intellectual laziness among Western people. They don't want to look racist, for example. They don't want to challenge the system outright because they don't want to uh, put at risk their friendships with people, put at risk their jobs. And these days, people even talk about worrying about their YouTube channel getting canceled, or they think about silly things, which also tells you how comfortable Western people have become, that so many of them don't want to take any risks, despite that so many of them actually understand the problems. So I'm with you on that. And that is why, again, I don't think the quick turnaround that America really needs isn't going to happen. Trump will, at best, slow things down. But even then, I'm skeptical. The fact that America will increasingly become a third world country is baked in the cake. There's no way out of it.
What in your view is you okay for a few more minutes? You got a few more
Yeah,
minutes?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
What in your view then on the financial aspect concerns you most as we're into the beginning of 2025?
Mike, I don't care so much about financial aspects. Now, I do worry about it when I'm working in my job, my regular work, which is in the capital markets, when I'm investing. I want to worry about all those things when we are talking about trading bonds or stocks. We worry about those things. But Mike, I have been close to being hungry. I have been actually hungry several times in my life. I have been close to being homeless a couple of times in my life. And I built my life back very quickly. Um, so I think financial problems can be done away with very quickly if you get yourself in order. The problem is America is not behaving as a society that is in order. It is not thinking rationally because there's a massive influence of third world think irrationality and immorality now in American politics. So that is the biggest problem. And then again, Trump wants to print more and more, uh, uh, and America is already sinking in debt. So yes, there's a problem, but so are other countries sinking in debt as well. I don't compare to other countries. That is not really the reason why I worry about America so much. I worry about it mostly because of demographics, because that's the highest order factor working against the future of America.
I was having a conversation with somebody, and we were talking about Americans, how you're seeing more and more of them. They might not be they might not be public or vocal about it, but so I could be out of out of touch with my statement, but people are realizing that the system is all bullshit and it's fake, and they are removing themselves from it, from the healthcare system, from the employment system, from the taxpayer system. People, I think, are abiding by the law less and less, and I think that number is just continuing to grow and will rise. I mean, there won't be any stop of that because people are just they're not buying it any longer.
Yeah, and that revolt is not a revolt that will help the future of America, because if you destroy the institutions, if you refuse to participate in the institutions, institutions will fall apart. And that is where I was saying that those ultra-right people who want to deport even those people who are citizens, and I'm again in a spirit with them, but the problem is that if you think about deporting people who are American citizens, the problem is that you have to first destroy every single institution. You have to destroy the Supreme Court. You have to destroy the policing system. You have to destroy every single institution before you can implement deporting citizens who belong to America. And that is why I agree with you that those people who have lost trust in the system, and they have lost trust in the system for the right reason. But if they are not trying to correct course and instead just thinking more about how they can bypass the institutions, they are going to weaken the institutions even further. So that will unfortunately add to the destruction of the US even more.
Yeah, and so where is the future then, or in the short term and the long term?
So, Mike, I'm currently in Tokyo. I spend a lot of my time in Japan and China and Korea and Taiwan and Singapore and Hong Kong. And I think these are the countries of the future. These people have brought in um, the ways and virtues of the Western society, and they have preserved those. So I know that, let's say, China gets a lot of bad press in the Western media, but these people have copied everything from the West. They have copied their concept of reason. They have copied a lot of moral values from the Western society. They have copied the institutions from the Western society. And the good thing they have done is that they have stayed mostly homogeneous, and they have even improved on those Western values and institutions as has gone by. So I think the future belongs to East Asian countries. And China continues to grow. I'm just blown away every time I am in China. I go to China 3, 4, 5 times a year. I spend a fair bit of time traveling around in China. I get blown away with the changes that are happening in China. So I think the future belongs to East Asia. So I'm not always I'm pessimist when I need to be a pessimist, but East Asia is the future of humanity.
What are your thoughts on Argentina and El Salvador? Spend any time there?
Well, I have spent a fair bit of time in Argentina. El Salvador is all right, Mike. I have thought a lot about Latin American countries. I have traveled a lot in Latin American countries. Latin America is great. It's a lovely place. I enjoy wherever I have been to in Latin America, and all is good in, let's say, Panama or Costa Rica or Mexico, until the time some guy with a machete comes in front of you, ready um, to decapitate you. So, and they will very readily decapitate you if anything goes wrong. So, I don't see much of a future for Latin America. The way I look at life, when I do my analysis, and again, this is something I mentioned earlier as well, I look at the proportion of Europeans and East Asian in every society to understand the future of that society. So let me retrace a bit. Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia are progressing to the extent that they have a Chinese population within their societies. Similarly, Latin American countries are better off only to the extent that they have European people in their populations. And that is where Uruguay and Argentina are better than the rest of Latin America, because they are ethnically European majority countries. So yes, they have a better future than the rest of Latin America. But El Salvador is a very special case. El Salvador has always had massive crime problems, and it was, from what I understand, they have really controlled criminality for now. But this is just a blip. Um, this is just a few years of sanity in El Salvador, because the European population of El Salvador, which I think is about 13% or something, had the swing uh, voting participation to get the current president elected. But swing is not everything. The majority eventually dominates, and it will come back to its criminality once the current prime minister or president is gone. So, no, I wouldn't bet my future on El Salvador at all.
And we touched on Western from Australia, New Zealand. No future there.
No, no, because again, they have done the same mistake that Canada has done. Now, Australia and New Zealand might be a step behind. Sorry, Australia and New Zealand might be a step behind Canada, but not destruction of those countries is also baked in the cake. There's no way out once you have brought in third world people. And Mike, I'm saying this because I have run three companies in India. I have hired a lot of people. I have managed a lot of people. I went back to India after my education in the UK because I wanted to contribute to the development of that country. The problem is I never ever managed to change a single person. I could not trigger moral consciousness among any person I wanted to help out. Um, it just simply doesn't happen. So the moment you have third world people, you should take it as a guarantee that they will not change. They will not become morally conscious or rational. And worse, they will become even worse with time, with every passing generation, because the incentive to become rational goes away. And that is also what's happening in the third world. As those people are becoming richer, they are becoming more immoral and more irrational, because the incentives to become rational disappear when you become richer.
Do you in last country? I can go through the whole. I go through the whole globe with you, Giant. What about the Philippines?
Well, Philippines has so yeah, I've been to Philippines many times. Philippines again is fun. The way Panama, Costa Rica, or Mexico can be. You can do whatever you want to. Uh, from a libertine perspective, these are fun countries to be in, but only up to the time that a guy with a machete hasn't come in front of you ready to decapitate your head. It's a very crime prone place. Filipinos can be very nice face to face, but the fact that these people are not philosophically oriented is a problem for Philippines, despite the fact that it's a Christian country. Here is the problem with the third world. They convert everything into they degrade everything. They convert Christianity into voodoo. If you give them education or prosperity, they destroy everything. Everything gets overridden by savagery and barbarianism that is inherent to the third world societies. So Philippines is not a bad place. With my money, I have a good time in Philippines. My money goes a long way, and I can afford the security. I can stay in a better parts of Philippines, and I can travel in luxury. But for the country itself, its contribution to the world is supplying call center people to the Western society today. Given that call centers have left India and moved to Philippines, and manual workers to the Middle East. and maids and servants to Hong Kong and Singapore. So that is the limit of their uh, contribution to the human society, which is not much, I would say.
Well, what do you say to a American that's going to be listening to this, and what should I do? What should I do?
Well, really, I think at this point of time, the only hope is to very, very strongly look at East Asia. Um, and don't and I think there is a reason why um, China is shown as such in such a bad light in the Western press. Uh, I guess partly because the people in power don't want people to look at China positively. I think people should look at these countries and think about investing in those countries, opening bank accounts in those countries, and possibly moving to those countries. Now, you will not get citizenships of those countries. Doesn't bother me. I'm interested in, it is what it is. East Asia is what every sane person in America should be looking at. But moreover, Mike, I think the big risk is that within the next few years, once Americans start understanding what the future awaits for America, the best people of America might start jumping the ship and might start moving to East Asia. And when that happens, the contribution that those very best people make towards the Western society will be gone. And the destruction of America will happen very quickly at that point of time. I am hearing, and I'm not sure about this, but China is actually encouraging the very best people from the Western society to move to China on work visas. So I think America people should move, prepare themselves before it's too late, because once a large number of Americans start thinking of moving to Japan or Korea or China or Singapore or Hong Kong, the visa regime of these countries will become extremely difficult.
What about Russia?
Um, yeah, I mean, so the problem with Western people is that they sometimes look at Russia in black and white, particularly when it comes to Ukraine and Russian issues. Russia has always been what I might say a savage place. And in the current context, I'm on probably on the side of Russia. But if you think that the center of gravity of humanity will ever move to Russia, I don't think that's going to happen, because Chinese and Japanese are more philosophically oriented than Russians are, by far more philosophically oriented. And the future of humanity belongs to where philosophy is. And because philosophy is what our moral consciousness, and philosophy is what distinguishes human beings from animals. And as I basically implied, two-thirds of the world population still live like animals because they don't have moral consciousness. They are not rational, and these are the people in the third world. So and Russian population is collapsing as well, mostly out of drunkenness uh, uh, and the current war has destroyed a huge chunk of their youth population. So again, I would rather, when I look at my future, I would rather look at East Asia than any other country.
How hard is it for you to, the time you spend in London to see what's occurring there and in France and just overall in Europe?
Um, so, Mike, this is what I usually do when I'm in Philippines or when I'm in Paris. I look like a very poor person. I want to use my worst T-shirt and bad jeans with broken shoes to walk around the city. I have walked all over Paris, for example, even in the ghetto areas of Paris. I have done the same in Malmo. I look like one of the same third world people when I go into those cities, those areas. So yes, I have. I unlike other people who fly in um, with a business class seat and stay in five-star hotels and dine out in the posh restaurants. I actually venture out to the worst parts of these cities and try to experience those. And it is from that experience that I said what I have. Yes, I feel extraordinarily sad for the Western society that most people, most Americans don't venture into ghettos. They don't want to understand what is happening there. They shut their eyes when they about many things to do with conflicts. And Paris is the same. Paris is an absolute disaster. You go outside the main train station of Paris, which everyone actually passes through anyway. I mean, it's a complete disaster.
London the same? When was the last time you were in London?
London, no, I go to London a couple of times a year, and yes, exactly the same situation is in London. London is a horrible place today, and again, you should actually call it Londonistan because it has. When I started going to London 30 years back, it was such a classy place. All that class has gone away from London. It has become almost like a third world city. I would still live in London because I can afford to live in better parts of London. But as a city, it has gone downhill very badly.
Where can people find you, Jayant?
I have a website, jayantbhandari.com.
And then you're on X?
I am on Twitter. Jayant Bhandari 5 is my handle.
I love that you don't engage with regular people on there. You have the elitist mentality, and I'm like, you know what? Not that I'm going to start taking that approach. When people have like 10 followers and they start attacking me, I just don't respond because I know what they're trying to do.
Yes, Mike. When I mention, I am an elitist when it comes to public policy and ideas. I'm not going to discuss ideas, people with the kind of people who don't pass a certain test of rationality and morality. And I think no one should because politics, every profession should be an elitist profession. I don't want to be a doctor who is not trained as a doctor. I don't want to go to a philosopher who is not trained as a philosopher. And trained does not necessarily mean having been to the university. And I don't want to talk about politics with a person who has not thought through many aspects of societies, cultures, and politics. And to that extent, I'm indeed an elitist. But I try my best, despite my Indian upbringing, to be nice to every single human being and even animals, which was actually a funny thing because I did not even realize that and dogs would not bark at you unless I arrived in the UK. Indian dogs come after you and bite you. That is how wretched third world countries can be.
When did you become an atheist?
I think it was I was very well. I think at one point of time, towards the end of my schooling, I read an article in which the article talked about, not something very deep, but it did question the existence of God as an entity. And I suddenly, it flipped a switch in my mind, and I was immediately an atheist. But as I have grown older, Mike, I am taking more and more interest in Christianity. Not that I believe in this physical form of God existing somewhere, but I think a society needs moral fabric. And while uh, people of European ethnicity are good enough, while they are good enough with Greco-Roman philosophy, but Christianity very likely was a part of Western civilization and continues to be a part of Western civilization. So I'm taking more and more interest in Christianity, if nothing else, to understand what that pillar means, because I have never been an insider in Christianity. I continue to be an atheist, but I'm a very sympathetic towards Christianity.
I was just going to ask, my last question was going to be, do you still call yourself an atheist, and do you see that changing as you further go down the Christianity route?
It could easily happen. I think once you once you start thinking of life as not a mechanical exercise, once you understand that reason is a tool, reason is not the machine, you can't. Uh, uh, Life is so complex that, for example, social sciences should not be called sciences because science usually means that you can work out how to design something. Societies and human beings cannot be designed or redesigned the way people with mechanistic thinking believe they could be. A lot of atheists are mechanistic in their thinking because they think that um, we are just a combination of molecules, which is actually true, but we are such a complex combination that it cannot be defined mechanistically. So I think we have to think or look at these things from a different point of view. And Christianity has probably done the best job out of all possible religions.
Jayant, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing to follow your work and watching more of your interviews. And love to have you back on.
I'll be very pleased to be back on your show, Mike. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Mic drop.